The morning sun rose over New Haven like it had for the past 50 years. The golden light touched the endless fields of grain that stretched to the horizon. Children ran through the streets of Haven City, laughing as they chased each other to school. In the distance, the great towers of the agricultural processing centers hummed with quiet efficiency. Jiho Park stood on his office balcony, watching the peaceful scene below. As colony administrator, he had spent 20 years helping New Haven grow from a small settlement into a thriving world of 2.3 million people. The colony produced enough food to feed dozens of other human worlds. They called it the breadbasket of the Outer Rim, and Jiho was proud of what they had built. High above in orbit, his daughter So Young worked in the research station. She studied alien plants that traders brought from distant worlds, looking for new crops that might grow in New Haven's rich soil. Her excited voice crackled through the communication device on Jiho's desk. "Father, you should see these samples from the Centauri system. I think we can modify them to grow in our climate. We could increase food production by 20%. Jiho smiled. "That's wonderful news. Your mother would be so proud." The conversation was cut short by a harsh alarm that echoed across the city. Jiho's aide, Hyunwoo Kim, burst into the office. The young doctor's face was pale with fear. "Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching the system. Military vessels, they're not responding to our communications." Jiho's blood turned cold. New Haven had only basic defenses. They were farmers, not soldiers. Their small defense fleet was meant to handle pirates, not a real military force. "How many ships?" Jiho asked. "Over 300. They're massive." The first explosions lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. The orbital defense platforms, Haven's only real protection, were destroyed in minutes. So Young's research station tried to escape, but enemy fighters swarmed around it like angry wasps. "So Young, respond!" Jiho shouted into his communicator, but only static answered. The alien ships looked like giant spears made of dark metal. They moved with terrifying precision, surrounding New Haven like hungry predators. Then came the voice, speaking perfect human language but with a cold reptilian accent. "Human settlement, you will surrender immediately. Resistance will result in total extermination." Jiho grabbed the planetary communication system. His voice carried to every home, every farm, every settlement on New Haven. "This is Administrator Park. All civilians must evacuate immediately. Follow emergency protocols. Get to the shelters or the escape ships. This is not a drill." The attack began 20 minutes later. Bright beams of energy struck the surface, turning buildings into ash and glass into melted sand. The aliens targeted the spaceport first, destroying most of the escape ships before they could launch. Then they hit the power stations, plunging whole cities into darkness. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim worked frantically in the medical center, treating the first wave of casualties. But these weren't normal injuries from energy weapons. The aliens were using something else, something that attacked human DNA itself. Victims aged rapidly, their bodies breaking down at the cellular level. "What kind of monsters design weapons like this?" Hyunwoo whispered as he watched a young farmer die in agony. The alien ground forces landed like a swarm of metal insects. They were tall, with scaled skin and yellow eyes that showed no mercy. Their leader, War Commander Theklar, surveyed the burning city with satisfaction. The intelligence reports were correct, he told his officers. These humans are weak. They build farms instead of fortresses. They study plants instead of weapons. This will be over quickly. But the humans of New Haven were not as helpless as they seemed. Jiho organized the survivors into groups. Some fought back with hunting rifles and farming equipment. Others worked to get the remaining civilians to safety. The local militia, small as it was, held key positions as long as they could. In orbit, So Young's research station had somehow survived the initial attack. The young scientist worked desperately to send out emergency signals to other human worlds. Her fingers flew over the controls as she broadcast everything she had recorded about the alien ships and weapons. "This is Research Station Haven 7, she transmitted. "We are under attack by unknown aliens. They are using bioweapons designed to kill humans. Please, someone respond. New Haven is dying." The battle raged for 18 hours. The human defenders fought with courage that surprised the Vexthari aliens. Every street became a battleground. Every building was defended to the last bullet. But the outcome was never in doubt. The aliens had too many ships, too many soldiers, too many weapons. Jiho made his final stand in the colonial government building. Around him stood the last few dozen defenders, farmers, teachers, doctors, mechanics. They had never been soldiers, but they held their weapons steady as the alien forces surrounded the building. "Sir, we should surrender," one of the militia officers said. "Maybe they'll spare the civilians." Jiho shook his head. "Look at what they've done to our people. Look at those weapons they use. They didn't come here to conquer, they came to exterminate." The final assault began at dawn. Jiho activated the building's emergency broadcast system one last time. His words reached not just New Haven, but the network of communication satellites that would carry his message to every human world. "This is Administrator Jiho Park of New Haven Colony. We are the last. The aliens who attacked us call themselves the Vexthari Empire. They use weapons designed to cause maximum suffering to humans. They show no mercy to civilians, no respect for surrender. We die here, but we do not die quietly. Remember New Haven. Remember what they did to us. Make them pay." The alien forces breached the building moments later. The last transmission from New Haven showed Jiho and his people fighting to the end, their courage unbroken even as their world burned around them. In orbit, So Young watched helplessly as the final pockets of resistance were eliminated. The aliens began landing massive machines that would strip the planet of its resources. New Haven, the garden world that had fed millions, was now nothing but ash and ruin. War Commander Thekalar stood in the ruins of Haven City, pleased with his easy victory. Around him, his soldiers celebrated. They had conquered an entire human world in less than a day. Surely this would prove to the galaxy that the Vexthari Empire was the strongest force in space. "Send word to the Supreme War Master," Thekalar ordered. "The human threat has been eliminated. Their colonies are as weak as we believed. We should continue with the next target." But as the alien ships prepared to leave, automated systems throughout human space were already carrying news of New Haven's fall. Emergency beacons broadcast the recordings that So Young had transmitted. Across 50 worlds, humans saw the images of their people dying under alien weapons designed specifically to torture them. The Vexthari had won their first battle against humanity, but they had no idea what was coming for them in return. The emergency session of the Terran Council had been called at midnight. In the great chamber beneath Luna City, representatives from every human world gathered around the massive holographic display. The images from New Haven played over and over, showing the systematic destruction of 2.3 million innocent lives. President Minho Lee sat at the head of the council table, his face carved from stone. He had not slept since the first reports arrived 3 days ago. Neither had anyone else in the room. The attack on New Haven had shaken humanity to its core. "Show them the weapon analysis," President Lee said quietly. Dr. Yunji Nam stepped forward, her hands shaking as she activated the holographic display. She was the head of the Colonial Medical Research Division, and what she had discovered made her sick to her stomach. "The aliens used a bioweapon specifically designed to target human DNA," she explained to the silent chamber. "It causes rapid cellular breakdown, essentially aging the victim to death in minutes. The weapon serves no military purpose except to cause maximum pain and terror." Fleet Admiral Dongmin Cho stood up slowly. He was a veteran of 3 colonial wars, a man who had seen the worst that space could offer. But his voice cracked as he spoke. "This was not a military action, this was genocide. They designed weapons to torture our people to death. They targeted schools, hospitals, and civilian shelters. They came to New Haven not to conquer, but to exterminate." Around the chamber, the representatives sat in stunned silence. Many had family on New Haven. The colony had been home to farmers, teachers, scientists, and their children. It was one of the most peaceful worlds in human space. On the military networks, the news spread like wildfire. Captain Taehyun Jang received the report while his dreadnought Soul's Fury was on patrol near the outer colonies. He read the casualty lists 3 times before the truth sank in. His parents had retired to New Haven 5 years ago, drawn by the peaceful life and beautiful landscapes. "Sir, are you all right?" his communications officer asked. Taehyun stared at the screen, his hands clenched into fists. "Send a message to Fleet Command. Soul's Fury requests immediate reassignment to active combat operations." Across human space, similar scenes played out on hundreds of ships. Lieutenant Commander Yujin Kwan commanded a destroyer squadron near the trade routes. When she learned that her brother's family had been visiting New Haven during the attack, she locked herself in her quarters and wept. Then she emerged, her face hard as steel, and began preparing her ships for war. The response was unlike anything in human history. The great corporations that normally competed for profit suddenly opened their factories to military production. The colonial marines called up every reserve unit. The Deep Space Fleet recalled every ship from exploration missions. Even the mysterious ghost squadrons, elite special forces that operated in the shadows, sent word that they were ready to fight. General Wu Jin-song was given the task of coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. His office became a war room, with holographic displays showing ship movements across 50 star systems. The numbers were staggering: 15,000 warships, from massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets to swift fighters that could dance between asteroids. "The aliens think we're soft," General Song told his staff. "They see our farming colonies and our research stations and think we're weak. They're about to learn the difference between being peaceful and being helpless." The industrial capacity of human civilization shifted to war production overnight. Orbital shipyards that normally built cargo vessels began turning out destroyers. Factories that made farming equipment started producing weapons and armor. The great forges of Mars worked around the clock, their red glow visible from orbit as they produced ammunition and ship armor. Intelligence reports began arriving from deep space monitoring stations. The aliens called themselves the Vexthari Empire, and they controlled several dozen star systems. Their military was based on conquest and intimidation. They had enslaved multiple species, building their empire on the suffering of others. Commander Mi Young-han led the reconnaissance missions into Vexthari space. Her squadron of stealth ships slipped past alien patrols, gathering intelligence on enemy positions and capabilities. What she found both angered and encouraged her. "They're overconfident," she reported to Admiral Cho. "They think the attack on New Haven was the end of the conflict. They're celebrating, not preparing for retaliation. Their fleets are scattered across their territory, not concentrated for defense." The Vexthari Supreme War Master Kreldos sat in his throne room receiving reports from across the Empire. The conquest of New Haven had been easier than expected. The humans had fought bravely but briefly, and their technology was generations behind Vexthari weapons. The next human colonies should fall even more quickly, War Commander Teklar reported. "We should begin the second wave of attacks within the month." But other reports were starting to worry some of the Vexthari commanders. Human merchant ships had disappeared from several star systems. Trade routes that had been busy for decades were suddenly empty. Most disturbing of all, several Vexthari patrol fleets had simply vanished without sending any distress calls. "Perhaps the humans are merely fleeing," one advisor suggested. "They may be abandoning their outer colonies rather than face our might." Kreldos nodded, but privately he was less certain. The humans had surprised them with their fierce resistance on New Haven. If they were truly as weak as the Empire believed, why had it taken 18 hours to overcome a single agricultural world? Back in human space, the war preparations continued at a frantic pace. Colonel Sang-wook Yu commanded the elite stormtrooper divisions, the best ground forces humanity had ever produced. His troops trained for urban warfare, orbital assaults, and operations in hostile alien environments. "The enemy uses bioweapons," Colonel Yu told his officers. "That tells us they prefer to cause fear and suffering rather than achieve quick military victories. We will show them what real soldiers look like." Major Hai-Jin Park specialized in urban warfare tactics. She studied the recordings from New Haven, analyzing how the aliens fought and where their weaknesses might be. Her conclusion was simple. The Vexthari were used to fighting enemies who would surrender quickly. They had never faced an opponent who would fight to the death for every street corner. Captain Jinnah Lee commanded the Cyber Warfare Division. Her teams had already begun infiltrating Vexthari communication networks, listening to their military chatter and learning about their command structure. What she heard filled her with cold rage. "They're planning to attack more colonies," she reported. "They want to use New Haven as an example to terrorize other human worlds into surrendering without a fight." Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim worked with a team of scientists to develop countermeasures for the bioweapons. The breakthrough came when they realized the weapons were designed specifically for human physiology. With some modifications, they could create vaccines and treatments that would protect their forces. But Dr. Kim was working on something else as well. If the aliens wanted to use fear as a weapon, humanity could play that game too. His team developed neural disruptors that would cause crippling terror in species with Vexithari brain patterns. The first human raids began 2 weeks after New Haven's fall. Commander Seok Jin Moon led fast attack squadrons against Vexithari supply lines. The aliens were shocked by the speed and ferocity of the attacks. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. "Impossible," Teklar raged when he received reports of the raids. "The humans have no military ships in this sector." But the attacks continued, growing bolder each time. Vexthari garrison fleets found themselves under assault by enemies they couldn't catch. Supply convoys were destroyed. Communication stations were reduced to rubble. The Empire's outer territories began to buzz with nervous chatter. In the depths of space, the main human battle fleet gathered at staging areas near Proxima Centauri. 15,000 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation, from massive dreadnoughts that bristled with weapons to sleek destroyers that could outrun anything the aliens possessed. Admiral Dongmin Cho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the greatest armada in human history take shape around him. Each ship represented years of engineering, thousands of trained crew members, and the combined industrial might of 50 worlds. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Operation Righteous Fury begins in 72 hours. We will avenge New Haven. We will ensure this never happens again. And we will show the galaxy what happens to those who mistake human kindness for human weakness." The stage was set for the largest space battle in galactic history. The war machine of humanity reached full power like a great engine coming to life. Across 50 star systems, fleets moved with purpose that had been building since the first news of New Haven reached Earth. What the Vexithari had dismissed as scattered farming colonies revealed themselves to be the most sophisticated military network in the galaxy. Admiral Dongmin Cho coordinated the massive operation from his flagship. The bridge displays showed the positions of thousands of ships across multiple star systems. Each fleet commander reported ready status as they moved into position for the largest military operation in human history. "Admiral, the 7th Reconnaissance Wing reports successful penetration of the Vexthari border systems," came the voice of Commander Myung Han through the communication system. Myung had been leading her stealth ships deeper into enemy territory for 3 weeks. What she found there made her blood run cold. The Vexithari Empire was built on the bones of dozens of conquered species. Slave worlds provided resources while their populations lived in misery. The aliens she had once considered merely brutal enemies were revealed to be something far worse. "Sir, you need to see these recordings," Myung transmitted to Admiral Cho. "The Vexthari have been using bioweapons on other species for decades. What they did to New Haven wasn't special. It's how they always fight." The intelligence reports painted a picture of an empire sustained by terror. The Vexithari would arrive at a peaceful world, demonstrate their bioweapons on a few cities, and demand immediate surrender. Most species, faced with such horror, would give up rather than watch their people die in agony. But the Vexthari had made one crucial mistake in their calculations. They assumed all species would react the same way to their terror tactics. They had never encountered humans before. Supreme War Master Kreldos was beginning to realize that the humans were not reacting as expected. The raids on supply lines were increasing, not decreasing. Instead of surrendering, the humans seemed to be growing more aggressive. "How many ships have we lost this week?" he demanded of his intelligence chief. 47 vessels, Supreme War Master. The humans appear to have ships in systems where our scouts reported no military presence. That's impossible. Our intelligence clearly showed these humans were farmers and traders. Perhaps our intelligence was incomplete, Supreme War Master. Kreldos studied the reports with growing unease. The human merchant vessels that had been tracked near Vexithari space were turning out to be something else entirely. Several had been intercepted and found to contain advanced sensor equipment and military-grade shields. The humans had been watching and preparing while pretending to be harmless traders. Colonel Sang-Wook Yu gathered his elite stormtrooper divisions on the training world of Titan. 20,000 of humanity's finest soldiers prepared for the ground campaign that would follow the space battles. These were not the civilian defenders of New Haven, but professional warriors trained for the harshest combat conditions in the galaxy. The enemy thinks they understand how to fight humans. Colonel Yu addressed his troops. They think fear will make us surrender. They think pain will make us weak. They're about to learn why every species in the galaxy respects human soldiers. Major Hae-Jin Park drilled her urban warfare specialists in mock alien cities. The training scenarios were based on intelligence gathered from the conquered worlds of the Vexthari Empire. Unlike the rigid, hierarchical fighting style of the aliens, human tactics emphasized flexibility and adaptation. Remember, the enemy has never faced an opponent who fights back, Major Park told her officers. They're used to quick victories through terror. When that doesn't work, they won't know what to do. Captain Jin Ali's cyber warfare unit had achieved something remarkable. They had successfully infiltrated the main Vexithari communication network without being detected. The intelligence flowing through their systems painted a clear picture of an empire in the early stages of panic. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Captain Lee reported to Admiral Cho. She played an intercepted transmission from a Vexthari fleet commander. "The humans are not behaving as predicted. Our raids on their supply lines have failed. Their ships appear in systems our scouts marked as empty. Request immediate reinforcement of border territories." Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim worked around the clock in his research facility. His team had not only developed effective countermeasures to the Vexthari bioweapons, but had created something the aliens would never expect. The neural disruptors were based on detailed scans of Vexthari brain patterns captured during the New Haven attack. The beauty of this weapon, Dr. Kim explained to his research team, is that it causes no permanent damage, but it will trigger overwhelming fear responses in any Vexithari within range. They want to use terror as a weapon. Let's show them what real terror feels like. The first major engagement occurred at the Kepler system, where Commander Seok Jin, Moon's fast attack squadrons encountered a full Vexthari patrol fleet. The aliens expected the humans to flee when faced with superior numbers. Instead, they found themselves in the fight of their lives. "Human vessels, you will surrender immediately or face destruction," came the transmission from the Vexthari fleet commander. Commander Moon's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Commander Seok-Jin Moon of the Human Colonial Navy. You want to see destruction? You came to the right place." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the entire Vexthari patrol fleet had been destroyed without a single human casualty. The aliens' rigid battle formations proved no match for human tactical flexibility. Their ships were larger and more heavily armed, but human vessels were faster and far more maneuverable. The recordings of the battle spread throughout Vexthari space within hours. For the first time, their military commanders saw humans fight as soldiers rather than desperate civilians. The difference was terrifying. "They move their ships like living things," one surviving Vexithari pilot reported. "Our weapons cannot target them. They appear behind us, strike, and vanish before we can respond." War Commander Teklar, the leader of the New Haven attack, was reassigned to defend the Vexthari border territories. As he studied the battle reports, he began to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The peaceful farmers he had slaughtered were protected by the most advanced military force he had ever encountered. "Send word to all sector commanders," Teklar ordered. The humans are not what we believed. They are not helpless farmers. They are warriors pretending to be farmers. All fleets are to move to defensive positions immediately. But it was already too late. Human stealth ships had been mapping Vexithari positions for weeks. Every major fleet base, every supply depot, every communication relay was marked for destruction. Commander Mi Young-han's reconnaissance teams had done their work perfectly. The industrial worlds of the Vexithari Empire began to feel the pressure as human raids intensified. Supply lines that had operated safely for decades were cut. Mining operations were destroyed. The slave worlds that provided the Empire's resources found themselves receiving mysterious transmissions, encouraging rebellion. "This is Major Heijin Park of the Human Liberation Force," the broadcast began. "Your oppressors are about to face justice. Rise up, and we will stand with you." On 17 different worlds, slave populations that had endured Vexithari rule for generations began to organize resistance movements. The aliens found themselves fighting on multiple fronts as their own empire began to crumble from within. General Wu Jin's song reviewed the strategic situation from his command center on Luna. The first phase of Operation Righteous Fury was exceeding all expectations. The Vexithari military was in chaos. Their supply lines were destroyed, and their slave worlds were in rebellion. Phase 2 begins in 48 hours, General Song announced to his staff. Admiral Cho will lead the main fleet against their fortress worlds. Colonel Yu will command the ground operations. I want the Vexithari military capacity completely eliminated. In the depths of space, the human armada completed its final preparations. 15,000 ships arranged themselves in attack formations. That would have been impossible for any other species to coordinate. Human naval doctrine emphasized cooperation and flexibility over rigid hierarchy, allowing for tactical innovations that confused and terrified their enemies. Captain Tae-hyun Jang stood on the bridge of Seoul's Fury, watching his crew make final preparations. His parents were gone, killed in the New Haven massacre, but their memory drove him forward. Around him, thousands of other ship commanders felt the same burning desire for justice. "All ships report ready for combat operations," came the voice of Admiral Cho. "Remember, we fight not for conquest, but for justice. We fight not for territory, but for the principle that innocent people should live without fear. The galaxy is watching. Show them what humans do to those who target the defenseless." The largest space armada in galactic history moved toward Vexithari space like a storm front. Behind them, the industrial might of 50 worlds continued to produce ships, weapons, and supplies. The peaceful farming colonies the aliens had dismissed as weak had revealed themselves to be the foundation of the most powerful military force. The galaxy had ever seen Supreme War Master Kreldos receive the final intelligence reports with growing dread. The human fleet arrived at the Vexithari fortress world of Kethmore, like an avalanche of steel and fire. 15,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their presence immediately overwhelming every sensor in the system. The sight struck terror into the hearts of every alien defender who witnessed it. Admiral Dongmin Cho stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays show enemy positions throughout the system. Kethmore was supposed to be impregnable, protected by massive orbital weapons platforms and defended by the largest Vexithari fleet outside their home system. "Admiral, enemy fleet commander is requesting communication," reported his communications. "Officer, put him through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing War Commander Theklar. The alien's yellow eyes were wide with what could only be described as shock. This was the same creature who had ordered the massacre at New Haven, who had watched 2.3 million humans die and felt nothing but satisfaction. "Human fleet, I am War Commander Theklar of the Vexithari Empire. You will withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Admiral Cho's expression remained cold as stone. "I know who you are, Theklar. You murdered families on New Haven. You used weapons designed to torture children to death. Today, you face the consequences." The transmission ended, and Admiral Cho turned to his tactical officer. "All ships commence Operation Righteous Fury. Show them what happens when you attack innocent humans." Captain Tae-hyun Jang commanded the dreadnought Seoul's Fury as it led the frontal assault on the orbital defense platforms, The massive Vexthari weapons fired beams of energy that could destroy smaller ships with a single hit, but human shield technology had advanced far beyond alien understanding. "Direct hit on Platform 7, reported his weapons officer. "Platform destroyed." The Soul's fury absorbed hits that should have crippled it, while returning fire that systematically destroyed the alien defenses. Around it, the other human dreadnoughts performed the same deadly dance, their weapons finding targets with mechanical precision. Lieutenant Commander Yujin Quan led her destroyer squadron in a precision attack on the orbital defense grid. Her ships moved like a school of fish, weaving between the massive energy beams while striking at the control nodes that coordinated the alien defenses. "Target the power coupling on Station 4, she ordered her squadron. "Synchronize strike in 3-2-1 mark." The destroyers fired as one, their combined firepower punching through the alien shields and destroying the control station. Without coordination, the remaining defense platforms began firing wildly, as likely to hit their own ships as the human attackers. The space battle above Kethmore became a masterpiece of human military coordination. Every ship knew its role, every captain understood the overall strategy, and every weapon fired with purpose. The Vexthari fleet, despite being on the defensive with prepared positions, found itself systematically destroyed. "How are they doing this?" War Commander Theklar demanded of his tactical officers. "We have the stronger position. We have heavier weapons. Why are we losing?" But his officers had no answers. They had never faced an enemy that fought with such coordination. Vexthari military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and terror tactics. They had no experience against opponents who could adapt and improvise in real time. On the surface of Kethmore, Colonel Sang-Wook Yu prepared his stormtroopers for the ground assault. The planet was a fortress world, covered with military installations, and defended by elite Vexthari soldiers. But the humans had advantages the aliens couldn't understand. "Remember, the enemy has never faced urban warfare specialists," Colonel Yu told his troops as they prepared to board the assault ships. "They're used to enemies who surrender after the first demonstration of force. We're going to show them what real soldiers look like." Major Hae-Jin Park studied the tactical displays, showing Kethmore's surface defenses. The Vexthari had built their fortifications according to standard military doctrine, creating strong points that could withstand frontal assault. But human tactics didn't rely on frontal assault. "We'll hit them from 6 different directions simultaneously," Major Park explained to her officers. "They can't coordinate their response if they don't know where the main attack is coming from." The orbital bombardment began at dawn, Kethmore time. Human ships targeted military installations with surgical precision, avoiding civilian areas, despite the aliens' use of their own population as human shields. The message was clear. Humans fought honorably, even against enemies who showed no honor themselves. Captain Jin Ali's cyber warfare unit had spent weeks infiltrating the Kethmore defense network. As the ground assault began, they activated viruses that disabled alien communication systems and turned their own defensive weapons against them. "Enemy command and control is down," Captain Lee reported. "Their ground forces are operating blind." The assault shuttles descended through the smoke and chaos like metal rain. Human stormtroopers rappelled into alien cities, their advanced armor shrugging off weapons that had terrorized dozens of species. The Vexthari defenders found themselves facing enemies who moved faster, shot straighter, and fought smarter than anything in their experience. Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim's neural disruptors were deployed for the first time in the underground tunnels beneath Kethmore's capital. The Vexthari soldiers who encountered the devices simply collapsed, overwhelmed by terror so intense they couldn't function. The aliens who had weaponized fear discovered what it felt like to be truly afraid. "Command, this is Delta Squad," came the voice of a stormtrooper over the communication system. "Enemy forces in Sector 7 have abandoned their positions. They're running." Throughout the city, similar reports came in. The Vexthari military, faced with enemies who couldn't be intimidated, broke and fled. Soldiers who had terrorized helpless civilians proved unable to face trained human warriors. Major Hae-Jin Park led her urban warfare specialists through the alien command center. The Vexithari had designed it to be impregnable, with multiple layers of defense and fallback positions. But human tactics turned their own defenses against them. Breach charges on the main door, Major Park ordered. Smoke grenades through the windows. Move fast and keep them confused. The assault was over in 20 minutes. The alien commanders who had planned the massacre of New Haven found themselves prisoners of the soldiers they had hoped to terrorize, into submission. War Commander Teklar made his final stand in the orbital command center, watching his fleet and his fortress world fall to the human attackers. His yellow eyes burned with hatred as he activated the facility's self-destruct system. "If I cannot win, then none of us will survive," he snarled. But Captain Jenna Lee's cyber warfare team had anticipated this move. The command codes were changed, the system was locked out, and Teklar found himself trapped in a facility he could no longer control. "Surrender and you will be treated according to human military law," came the voice of Colonel Yu through the communication system. "Continue to resist and we will come for you." The Battle of Kethmore ended 72 hours after it began. The strongest fortress world in Vexthari space had fallen completely. Their fleet was destroyed, their ground forces were captured or scattered, and their command structure was in human hands. But the psychological impact was even greater than the military victory. Recordings of the battle spread throughout the Eteor galaxy showing species after species that the Vexthari Empire could be defeated. The aliens who had seemed unstoppable were revealed to be vulnerable when faced with truly superior opponents. Admiral Cho stood in the ruins of the Kethmore Command Center, surrounded by captured alien officers. War Commander Theklar knelt before him, his scaled hands bound behind his back. "You destroyed New Haven," Admiral Cho said quietly. "You murdered 2.3 million innocent people. You used weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. What do you have to say for yourself?" Theklar raised his head, his yellow eyes still defiant. "We are Vexithari. We take what we want. We destroy what opposes us. Your people were weak." Admiral Cho nodded slowly. "My people were peaceful. There's a difference. But you made them into something else when you attacked our families. You turned farmers into soldiers, scientists into warriors. You created the very enemy that destroyed you." The news of Kethmore's fall reached the Vexthari home system within hours. Supreme War Master Kreldos received the reports with growing desperation. His strongest fortress world had fallen in 3 days. His best fleet had been annihilated. The humans were not stopping to consolidate their gains, but were already moving toward the next target. "Send word to all remaining fleets," Kreldos ordered. "Fall back to the home system. We will make our final stand there." But across Vexthari space, fleet commanders were receiving different orders from human sources. Major Hyjin Park's psychological warfare unit was broadcasting surrenders, terms to every alien military installation. "Lay down your weapons and surrender immediately. You will be treated with honor according to human military law. Continue to resist, and you will share the fate of Kethmore." Many alien commanders, having seen what happened to the impregnable fortress world, chose surrender over destruction. The Vexithari Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. The human armada arrived in the Vexthari home system like the wrath of gods made manifest. 15,000 ships stretched across multiple orbital planes around the alien sun, a formation so vast that it cast shadows on the moons of distant planets. Every ship gleamed with deadly purpose, their weapons charged and their crews ready for the final confrontation. Supreme War Master Kreldos stood in his command chamber on the primary world, watching the tactical displays with growing horror. His intelligence officers had told him the humans possessed perhaps a few hundred military vessels. Instead, he faced the largest battle fleet in galactic history. "How is this possible?" he whispered to his tactical chief. "Where did they get so many ships?" "Supreme War Master, our intelligence was wrong. The humans have been building this fleet for decades. Every one of their trading posts was actually a military base. Every merchant vessel was a disguised warship. They've been preparing for a war we didn't know was coming." Admiral Dongmin Cho activated the system-wide communication network from his flagship. His voice carried to every Vexthari installation. every military base, every population center throughout their home system. I am Admiral Dongmin Cho of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have committed genocide against innocent civilians. You have used weapons designed to torture families to death. You chose this war when you attacked New Haven. Now face the consequences of your choices. The message continued, broadcast in perfect Vexithari language. Any military installation that surrenders immediately will be spared destruction. Any civilian population that remains neutral will be protected. But those who participated in the murder of human families will be brought to justice. President Min Ho Lee's image appeared on screens throughout the alien system. The leader of humanity spoke with quiet authority that somehow seemed more terrifying than any threats. You wanted to teach the galaxy that attacking your enemies, families, was an acceptable tactic. Today, the galaxy learns what happens when you try that approach against humanity. Today, the universe discovers why every species that has ever met humans in peace has chosen to remain our friends. General Wu Jin Song coordinated the massive operation from his command ship. The attack was planned with surgical precision. Military targets were marked for destruction. Civilian areas were designated as protected zones. The humans would show the galaxy that even in war, there were lines that honorable species did not cross. All units commence Operation Final Justice, General Song ordered. Remember, we fight to end this war, not to become what we're fighting against. Captain Tae-hyun Jang led the dreadnought squadrons in orbital bombardment of the primary military installations. The Soul's Fury and its sister ships fired in perfect coordination, their weapons striking with accuracy that turned fortress complexes into rubble, while leaving nearby civilian structures untouched. Target the orbital defense platforms, Captain, Jang ordered his weapons officer. Full power sustained barrage. I want those installations completely eliminated. The alien defenses fired back with everything they had, but their weapons seemed pathetic against the advanced human shields. Energy beams that could crack mountains barely scratched the armor of human dreadnoughts. The technological gap between the species had become a vast chasm. Lieutenant Commander Yu-Jin Kwan commanded her destroyer squadron in a systematic dismantling of the Vexithari fleet. The alien ships were larger and more heavily armed, but they moved like ancient sailing vessels compared to the swift human destroyers that danced around them. All ships execute attack pattern Delta 7, she ordered. Strike the engine sections, disable their mobility, then move to the next target. Her destroyers moved in perfect formation, their weapons finding weak points in alien armor with mechanical precision. One by one, the ships that had terrorized dozens of worlds found themselves helpless, drifting in space with their engines destroyed and their weapons silenced. The ground invasion was led by Colonel Sang-Wook Yu, whose stormtroopers had become legendary throughout the galaxy for their skill and discipline. But this assault was different from the others. This time they were not fighting to conquer territory but to capture war criminals. Remember your orders, Colonel Yu told his troops as they prepared to land. We want the leadership alive for trial. The galaxy needs to see that justice can be achieved without becoming monsters ourselves. Major Haejin Park led the assault on the planetary capital, where the alien government had taken shelter in underground bunkers. Her urban warfare specialists moved through the city like ghosts, avoiding civilian areas while striking at military targets with devastating effectiveness. Sector 7 is clear, came the report from one of her squad leaders. No resistance encountered. The alien military units are abandoning their positions without fighting. Throughout the alien capital, Vexithari soldiers surrendered in large groups. The species that had built their empire on intimidation simply collapsed when faced with enemies who could not be intimidated. Their weapons were designed for terror, not military effectiveness, and their tactics assumed enemies would flee rather than fight. Captain Jinna Lee's cyber warfare unit achieved something unprecedented in galactic warfare. They took complete control of the Vexithari communication network, using it to broadcast surrender instructions to every military unit in the system. Attention all Vexithari forces. The broadcasts began. Your leadership has committed war crimes against innocent civilians. Lay down your weapons immediately and you will be treated according to human military law. Continue to resist, and you will be destroyed. The psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. Alien units that had never lost a battle found themselves facing enemies who fought with such coordination and skill that resistance seemed hopeless. Many chose surrender over annihilation. Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim's research team deployed their neural disruptors throughout the alien command centers. The devices that caused overwhelming fear in Vexathari brain patterns were used strategically to disable key enemy positions without causing permanent harm. The beauty of this approach, Dr. Kim explained to his team, is that we defeat them without becoming like them. They used pain as a weapon. We use fear, but only to prevent further violence. Supreme War Master Kreldos made his final desperate move. Surrounded in his command bunker by advancing human forces, he activated a system that would detonate weapons of mass destruction throughout his own territory. If I cannot rule the galaxy, then I will deny it to the humans, he snarled at his remaining officers. Activate the planet killers. Destroy everything. But Captain Jin Ali's team had anticipated this move. The command codes had been changed hours earlier. The weapon systems had been disabled, and the Supreme War Master found himself trapped in a bunker he could no longer control. Kreldos, this is Colonel Sang-Wook Yu, came the voice through the bunker's communication system. You are surrounded, your weapons are disabled, your fleet is destroyed. Surrender now, and you will receive a fair trial for your crimes. The alien leader's yellow eyes burned with rage as he realized his situation was hopeless. Around him, his remaining officers began laying down their weapons. The empire that had conquered dozens of worlds was ending not with a glorious battle, but with the whimper of defeated bullies. The final assault on the command bunker was led by Major Hae-Jin Park herself. Her troops moved through the underground complex with practiced efficiency, securing each section without unnecessary violence. When they reached the central command chamber, they found Kreldos sitting alone on his throne, his weapons thrown to the floor. I am Supreme War Master Kreldos of the Vexathari Empire, he said as human soldiers surrounded him. I demand to be treated with the respect due to my rank. Major Park looked at the alien leader with cold contempt. You lost the right to demand respect when you ordered the murder of civilians on New Haven. You're not a war leader anymore. You're just a war criminal waiting for trial. The battle for the Vexathari home system ended 72 hours after it began. The alien fleet was completely destroyed or captured. Their planetary defenses were reduced to rubble. Their government was in human custody, and their military capacity was permanently eliminated. But the most remarkable aspect of the human victory was what didn't happen. Despite their overwhelming superiority, the humans had not targeted civilian populations. Despite their rage over New Haven, they had not used indiscriminate weapons. Despite having the power to exterminate the Vexathari species, they had chosen justice over revenge. Admiral Cho stood in the captured alien command center, surrounded by the leaders who had ordered the massacre of 2.3 million innocent humans. Kreldos and his war council knelt before him, their hands bound and their empire in ruins. You came to New Haven expecting easy victory over peaceful farmers, Admiral Cho said quietly. You found warriors pretending to be farmers. You used terror as a weapon against innocent families. You discovered that humanity reserves its greatest fury for those who target the defenseless. The alien leader raised his scaled head, his yellow eyes still defiant despite his defeat. What will you do with us, human? Will you torture us as we tortured your people? Admiral Cho shook his head. No, we will give you what you never gave our people. 1 year after the fall of the Vexathari Empire, the galaxy had changed in ways that few could have imagined. Where once there had been fear and oppression, new alliances bloomed like flowers after a long winter. The human victory had not just ended a war, but had fundamentally altered how species interacted across the stars. So-Young Park stood on the observation deck of New Haven's rebuilt orbital station, watching ships from a dozen different species arrive at the memorial ceremony. As the new colony administrator, she had overseen the reconstruction of the world her father had died defending. The cities were bigger now, more beautiful, But the memorial gardens where Jiho Park and 2.3 million others were honored remained, the heart of the colony. The Centauri delegation has arrived, her assistant informed her. They're requesting permission to lay flowers at the memorial. So Young nodded, her eyes misting slightly. The same alien species that had once feared to travel through this sector now came regularly to pay their respects to the humans who had died fighting against tyranny. New Haven had become a symbol of something greater than just human loss. It represented the price of freedom and the cost of standing against evil. Admiral Dong Min Cho stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the new Galactic Defense Alliance headquarters, watching representatives from over 100 species take their seats. As the first Supreme Commander of the Alliance, he bore the responsibility of maintaining the peace that humanity's victory had created. The session will come to order, he announced. Today, we discuss the integration of the former Vexthari territories into the Alliance structure. The transformation had been remarkable. Species that had been enslaved for generations were now free to govern themselves. Worlds that had been strip-mined for alien resources were being restored with human technology. The Vexthari themselves, those who had not participated in war crimes, were being slowly reintegrated into galactic society under careful supervision. General Wu Jin Song, now bearing the title of Marshal of Peacekeeping Forces, reviewed the reports from across former Vexthari space. His transformation from war leader to peace builder had been as dramatic as the galaxy's own change. The rehabilitation programs are showing excellent progress, he told his staff. Former Vexthari, soldiers are volunteering for humanitarian missions. Some are even requesting assignments to help rebuild the worlds their empire once conquered. The psychological impact of humanity's restrained victory had been profound. The aliens who had expected torture and execution instead found themselves offered education, therapy, and the chance to make amends for their crimes. Many Vexthari had broken down completely when they realized the extent of their empire's evil and were now working desperately to atone for their participation. Brigadier General Sang Wook Yu oversaw the transition teams that helped former slave worlds establish democratic governments. His stormtroopers had become teachers and advisors, showing liberated populations how to build institutions that would protect their freedom. The Kelvari people have successfully held their first free elections in 3 centuries, he reported, to Alliance Command. The Thurian Confederation has established a planetary council. Even the former Vexthari colony worlds are beginning to understand concepts like representative government and individual rights. Dr. Kyung-Soo Kim led the joint research initiative that was transforming former Vexthari weapons technology into medical advances. The same bioweapons that had caused such suffering on New Haven were being reverse-engineered to create treatments for genetic diseases that had plagued multiple species for millennia. It's ironic, he told his research team. Their weapons designed to cause pain are now being used to heal. The neural disruptors we developed to defeat them are helping treat trauma in the survivors of their empire. Major Jinnah Lee, now a colonel, commanded the Interspecies Communication Corps that had become essential to maintaining galactic peace. Her teams worked to prevent the misunderstandings and cultural conflicts that could lead to future wars. The key, she explained to her officers, is making sure every species understands that we're not trying to build a human empire. We're trying to build a galactic community where no one has to live in fear. The success of this approach was evident throughout the galaxy. Species that had initially feared human dominance now competed to join the Alliance. Worlds that had once been isolated by fear of alien conquest were now connected by trade routes protected by joint defense fleets. Commander Mi Young-han, now an admiral herself, led the Deep Space Exploration Corps on missions to contact newly discovered species. Her protocols, developed after the Vexthari War, emphasized peaceful contact and cultural understanding. First contact with the Zorlani Confederation was successful, she reported from the edge of known space. They were initially suspicious, having heard rumors of powerful humans, but our non-aggressive approach and gifts of medical supplies won their trust. They're interested in joining the Alliance. The transformation of galactic society was perhaps most visible in the fate of the former Vexthari leadership. Supreme War Master Kreldos and his war council had been tried before a joint tribunal of species they had oppressed. The trials were broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing the evidence of their crimes while demonstrating human commitment to justice rather than revenge. The tribunal finds the defendants guilty of genocide, crimes against sentient beings, and the systematic use of terror weapons against civilian populations. The Chief Justice had announced. The sentence is life imprisonment with the possibility of rehabilitation through service to the species they harmed. Even in punishment, humanity had chosen a path that emphasized restoration over destruction. The war criminals worked in supervised programs to help rebuild the worlds they had destroyed, their labor contributing to healing the damage their empire had caused. President Min Ho Lee addressed the first full session of the Galactic Assembly, speaking to representatives from nearly 200 species. His words carried the weight of the human victory but also the promise of the future they were building together. 1 year ago, a small group of aliens made the mistake of believing that peaceful people were weak people, he began. They learned the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. But more importantly, the galaxy learned that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build. The assembly hall erupted in applause from beings of dozens of different species. The human approach to victory, swift, decisive, but ultimately merciful, had created a template for how advanced civilizations should behave. Captain Taehyun Jang, now an admiral commanding the New Haven Defense Fleet, stood in the memorial gardens where his parents were honored. The rebuilt colony bustled with activity around him, but the gardens remained a place of quiet reflection. They would have been proud, so young Park said, joining him at the memorial wall. Your parents, my father, all of them. They died defending the idea that peaceful people should be able to live without fear. Look around you. That idea won. The IB gardens were filled with representatives from dozens of species, all paying their respects to the humans who had died fighting tyranny. Children of multiple alien races played together nearby, protected by the Alliance fleet that ensured such tragedies would never happen again. Dr. Eunji Nam worked in her new laboratory on Luna, developing medical technologies that benefited all Alliance species. The bioweapon countermeasures she had created during the war were now standard medical equipment throughout the galaxy. The Vexthari bioweapons were designed to target specific DNA patterns, she explained to her research team. By understanding how they worked, we've learned to treat genetic disorders that were previously incurable. Good can come from even the worst evil, if we're wise enough to see it. The memorial ceremony on New Haven concluded with a moment of silence for all those who had died in the war. But it was followed by a celebration of the peace that their sacrifice had purchased. Representatives from the Alliance species mingled freely, their children playing together under the protection of the human fleet. Admiral Dong Min Cho delivered the closing address, his words carried throughout the galaxy by the communication networks that now connected hundreds of worlds in peace. The Vexthari Empire believed that fear was the foundation of order, he said. They thought that by terrorizing the innocent, they could maintain control over the galaxy. They were wrong. True order comes from justice. Real peace comes from protecting the weak, not preying upon them. The camera pulled back to show the vast crowd gathered in the memorial gardens, beings from across the galaxy, united in remembrance and hope. Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had learned the difference between peace through fear and peace through justice. In the distance, the lights of the Alliance fleet could be seen patrolling the system, their presence a reminder that while humanity preferred peace, they were always ready to defend it. The species that had once been dismissed as soft farmers had become the guardians of galactic freedom. The story of New Haven's fall and the human response had become legend throughout the galaxy. But more than just a tale of military victory, it had become a template for how civilized species should behave.